Shalom, welcome to this week's edition of the Pilichowski Page, and the news update for Israel advocates and advocates of the United States-Israel relationship. This week we have a lot of internal politics within Israel that has great consequences both to Iran and to Israeli leadership. First, within Iran, we've seen this debate going on for a couple of months now between former Shin Bet head, that's the Israeli security agency, Yuval Diskin, and Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister Ehud Barak. Former Shin Bet head Diskin feels that no matter how much Bibi Netanyahu and Ehud Barak, the Prime Minister and Defense Minister respectively, believe that Israel can stop Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons, that they're incorrect, and an Israeli strike against Iran's nuclear capabilities will never be effective enough to stop Iran. A source close to the Prime Minister says that this is just bad apples on Diskin's part, and in reality he's simply upset at the fact that Prime Minister Netanyahu did not put him as the head of the Mossad, and this is his way of acting out to show that he actually knows better than the Prime Minister. Which side is correct? Unfortunately, us laymen will never know, but it's an interesting debate to watch unfold, and once again, realization of how great the Israeli country is and the state of Israel, and the fact that it allows such debate on such an important topic to be held in the public discourse. We also see a new direction from America taking on Iran, and that is that the Obama administration, as part of its diplomatic effort to try to solve the Iranian issue of trying to get nuclear weapons, has started something different, which is that it would allow, if there's an agreement reached where safeguards would be put and the United Nations would be able to monitor whether or not Iran is really stopping its nuclear aspirations in terms of war and is simply concentrating on energy, the United States would allow Iran to purify its uranium. That means enriching uranium to a certain extent. Again, just a little background. To make a nuclear weapon, one has to enrich uranium to about 90%. To have nuclear energy, in other words, to supply electricity based on nuclear power as opposed to other forms of power, one has to enrich its uranium about between 5 and 20%. If Iran decides to enrich its uranium, or if it's already enriched its uranium past that 20% on the way to 90%, it really has no reason to do so unless it was trying to acquire a nuclear weapon. That would be the only reason. We want inspectors to come into Iran's nuclear power in order to be able to see that its nuclear aspirations are really for energy and not for war. If America would allow Iran to enrich its uranium to a certain extent just to energy, it would do so only if inspectors were allowed in. Moving forward, the United States, on the other hand, while it is pursuing diplomatic relations with Iran and trying to solve the problem diplomatically, also moved its highest class of Air Force jet, the F-22 stealth fighter, to the United Arab Emirates, which almost borders Iran, but well within striking range of Iran and well with capability of taking out Iran's nuclear sites. So on the one hand, the United States is taking a diplomatic approach, trying to convince Iran in its best interests not to acquire nuclear weapons. On the other hand, it's showing its big stick with this move of putting its fighter jets close to the Iranian border. Within Israel itself, we see another debate going on, and that is the coalition government, held mostly together by Yisrael Beitenu, one of the major parties in Israel, which has a problem with the way that the Netanyahu government is drafting people into the army. Most Arabs and Haredi Jews have an exemption from the army, and they want to see them drafted either into the army or the Yisrael Beitenu wants them to have some sort of national service, not where they're just excused while the rest of Israel goes ahead and serves in the army or provides national service. Yisrael Beitenu is willing to pull out of the coalition over this if it does not get its way. May 9th is when the elections would be held, not elections, but the vote in the Knesset on Yisrael Beitenu's plan of drafting more Haredim and Arabs into national service. If it doesn't go their way, they're threatening to pull out of the coalition. Meretz and Labor also helping along, saying that they also would break out of the coalition, which would drop the Israeli government and force early elections. Prime Minister Netanyahu says he's not scared of early elections. Bring it on. He's willing to go for early elections. The next elections are scheduled for September of 2013, over a year and a half away, but he's willing to have early elections. The most recent polling shows that Prime Minister Netanyahu's party would get double the amount of seats of any other party. And then in that sense, that would be in favor of Prime Minister Netanyahu. The last news story that we have is that President Obama has released $192 million in financial aid to the Palestinians, something that the United States Congress said they did not agree with. The President is allowed to do this because he has waiver rights, which says that if it's a national security interest of the United States to give this money, the United States Congress allows him. That is what he is claiming. That's what Secretary of State Hillary Clinton will report to Congress, that for United States security interests, they need to release this money. Again, controversial move. A lot of us are not so happy in seeing the Palestinians with $192 million of United States tax money, especially considering their unilateral move to statehood and refusing to sit down and negotiate with the Israelis for an eventual peace deal. That's your news update. Check out the Pilichowski page on the web. All the best.